we first heard about home visits as part of this process, I really distinctly remember the conversations that happened in our community with people saying, this is not part of our culture. That doesn't happen here. So that was sort of the first step of the introduction of a home visit. And we carried on and did study circles, and there was no home visits.
We kind of had an assumption that our Koreans usually feel like they feel really burdened to open up their houses, to invite people to come. So home visit is not a good strategy for Korean community.
Exactly, the block, like you said, the block is in our own heads that people don't want to be visited. I remember as part of a study circle, and the co-tutor was a very scientific thinker, and he said, you know what, when I take chemistry at school, we study about chemistry, but then we do experiments. Because you can't just learn from a text. You actually have to go and do an experiment. This is just how it works. So we were studying book 1. He said, well, we're studying about prayer. Let's go visit people and see what prayer is really like. And so I remember those first few visits we went. And it was amazing. It opened everyone's eyes. And from then on, it was like releasing an avalanche of home visits. With everything we did home visits. We're studying book 4. Our favorite home visits to do is visit people and talk about the life of Baha'u'llah and the Bab. And we take book 4, and there's simple pictures in there, and we use them to help us, and we have our most profound conversations.
So 2 resource people in the cluster mobilized 15 friends of the community. We organized the home visit, and we just put it into action right away. The result was really, really positive. Our fear for home visit was preconception, and those people who were visited they were feeling so cared for, and they felt loved by us.
Do you remember the home visit we did about book 4 in UBC with the Chinese friends, you and I, in supper?
Which one?
And the ones that were like 2 or 3 of them, they accepted Baha'u'llah, and suddenly hugs broke out, and we're talking about, we're spiritual brothers and sisters, and we're sitting with 5-6 Chinese friends, and so they've come to a point during our home visit that they have recognized Baha'u'llah as a manifestation for today, and they were very familiar with other concepts too. So then, of course, there was a joyful environment, we were hugging and this, and someone said, we're spiritual brothers and sisters, and this Chinese lady, and she looked at me, she goes, does that mean that you and I are brothers and sisters? We might look a little bit different with the hairstyle. I think it's probably one of the best home visits that I was, and because it was captivating throughout. It was serious, joyful, and captivating. And we spoke about the life of Baha'u'llah and the Bab, I believe, that day. And we used the drawings from book 4, and we went through the sequence.
I had one very interesting experience going, on the book 1 where you go to somebody's house to study a prayer together. I was being accompanied actually by somebody. This was, a few years ago. And on the way to this person's house, the person who was accompanying me asked if I had thought about a prayer to study. And I hadn't. And then I thought, well, maybe it should be left up to the person that we were going to visit, who was a Baha'i. She wasn't somebody that, participated in community meetings very often, but she was a Baha'i. And it was very interesting because when we got there, she knew why we were coming, and we talked about it a little bit when we got there. And I asked her if there was a prayer that she had in mind that she would like us to study together. And I thought, if she doesn't, yes, I can suggest one. Well, the prayer that she wanted to study, I would not have suggested in a million years, because I knew a little bit about her social background, and I don't need to talk about it here, but it was a little bit controversial, and the prayer that she chose to study almost directly pointed towards those issues, and she brought them up, and we talked about it, and it was the most loving, accepting conversation. And what the wisdom that we drew out of this prayer towards this situation, just, I think it just knocked us all away. I can't imagine how I would have had this kind of conversation with her if not through this vehicle of starting off with this prayer, and it's very powerful, the message that came through it and the wisdom that came through it. And I'll never forget that experience.
In Vancouver, I was reading an article. About 50% of the population is born outside of the country, and people move here, and they're isolated. And I was reading an article about a lady who lives maybe 10 blocks from me, because I knew the area it described, and it was describing what isolation she's experiencing. Oftentimes, single mothers who come here from other countries are so isolated. It is commonly known amongst people who work with them that they surround themselves with three things: TV, welfare, and antidepressant drugs. Because they're so isolated. So it's fine if somebody says home visits aren't part of our culture. That's great. Our culture needs to change. Like, people need these home visits. So, and we're finding people love to be visited.
We went on a home visit with a friend from China who's doing book one, and we talked about it. What is the purpose of the home visit, and what do you do, and all of this, and he decided to pick the prayer of from Abdul Baha. This is the home. This is my home, the home of laughter and joy and all of this, because I had it on the wall. And he said, "Can I pick this?" And I said, "Sure." I contacted the family who were visiting, and I said, "This is the prayer that my friend would like to share with you." And they were also very happy. They said, "Well, can we also discuss this when you come?" It's fine. So we went on this home visit, and this friend never ever experienced just visiting strangers, because always in the past visited individuals who he had said hello, how are you, several times, or knew neighbors of friends, or so on. But to go and meet someone whom he never met before, he never done this before. Anyway, we went there, and after 2.5 hour visit, when we were leaving, he stopped before going into the car, and he said, "Look, I've never ever experienced something like this, where what you were talking about, the spiritual and material civilization, how they progress hand in hand. We had wonderful spiritual segment of this visit. I learned so much from these people. I felt I've known them for a long time." This is what he said. He said, if this is a glimpse of what the divine civilization that Baha'is are trying to build, this is more than thrilling, because I've never experienced. And to me, I went on home visits, but also I never looked at it from that perspective, that someone never been on a home visit with people whom never he met before.
If the tutor approaches it with confidence, people accept it.
What seems to be a very simple act of service, go to somebody's house, study a prayer together, have tea, it seems very simple, but it's yet another lesson about how these very simple acts of service can lead to profound conversations. They don't always do that, but there's the potential for that. You can really create a very deep bond with that person over starting with studying a prayer.
This is not part of our culture.
So home visit is not a good strategy for Korean community.
The block is in our own heads that people don't want to be visited.
Our fear for home visit was preconception.
And it was amazing. It opened everyone's eyes. And from then on, it was like releasing an avalanche of home visits.
And it was the most loving, accepting conversation, and what the wisdom that we drew out of this prayer towards this situation, just, I think it just knocked us all away.
It was captivating throughout. It was serious, joyful, and captivating.
What seems to be a very simple act of service, go to somebody's house, study a prayer together, have tea, it seems very simple, but it's yet another lesson about how these very simple acts of service can lead to profound conversations.
Fine if somebody says home visits aren't part of our culture, that's great. Our culture needs to change.
People who were visited they were feeling so cared for, and they felt loved by us.